The stabbing on a Charlotte train is sparking a political firestorm, with some Republicans pointing the finger at former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. Paul Spey checks one of those claims for PolitiFact.
Does Roy Cooper bear direct responsibility for the stabbing death in Charlotte? Well, that's what Michael Whatley posted on social media the other day. He's a Republican who's running for the U.S. Senate seat that's up for election next year. Cooper, who's a Democrat, is also running for that seat. And Whatley said Cooper is the reason that the Charlotte stabbing suspect was, quote, kept on the streets. You can see he said Cooper issued an executive order in June 2020 and that Brown was released from prison just 3 months later. Now, what did that order actually do? Well, it created a group called the Task Force for Racial Equity in Criminal Justice. That group met, and then in December of that year, it released recommendations for changing the criminal justice system. Now, some of the suggestions called for things like eliminating cash bail and promoting alternatives to arrest. But take a look at Brown's record here. He had been in prison for armed robbery, and then you can see he was released in September of 2020. In other words, Brown had already been released from prison by the time the task force published those recommendations. Now you might be wondering, did Cooper's order somehow let Brown out of prison early? No. We asked that same question to the Department of Adult Correction. You can see their email response here. They said Brown was not released early or paroled. They said he served 100% of his minimum sentence. Now, Whatley's post is right that Brown has been arrested since then. Before the stabbing, Brown was awaiting trial on charges for misusing the 911 system. That's a nonviolent misdemeanor, and people aren't typically held in jail for those kinds of crimes. And to date, there's no evidence that Cooper had any influence over how the judges or the magistrates have handled that case. All of this is why the Truth Meter rates Whatley's claim false. Read more about Brown's record at WRAL.com.